Hello and welcome to the RCB radio show. My name is Nicholas Ryan here, and I'm joined here by Seamus Hayes. Seamus needs no introduction, a long time journalist here in Clare Sport and further afield. Very welcome, Seamus. Good to have you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on board. Seamus, we'll have a quick look at last weekend's football events. Matches took place, and I suppose the big one was St. Joseph's Stuart Bearfield versus Clooney-Quinn. It's a game I was at, and I suppose it's pretty much one-way traffic. It ended 115 to 8 points. St. Joseph's did finish strongly, all right, but I think more seasoned campaigners in Clooney-Quinn and a physically stronger team, I think, had the better of the exchanges.
Yeah, definitely. The experience was key there. You know, Gary Brennan, it was outstanding. Barry Toner, another senior, I suppose you could describe him as a senior player, played a key part in the victory. And I suppose that was the difference, the experience of those fellas. I think it was 10 points or 9 or 10 points that Gary Brennan finished with. And he's playing outstanding football. Sure, we've known that for the past 10 or 12 years, what he's capable of. And, he was equally, well helped by his brothers, Shane and Killian, and Barry Toner, as I said. Experience was the key there. I was a bit disappointed with St. Joseph's. I expected, for a talented young group, that they would have maybe made more of a battle of the game, but they didn't seem to. You could see that they're not used to playing at that level. And it takes time to adjust to that level of football, or any game, I suppose, whether it be hurling or football. It takes time to adjust to the standard and what goes on at senior level. So, I think they'll benefit from this year. If they can keep that group together, I think there's definitely brighter days ahead for them. But for now, Clooney-Quinn are deservingly got the last place in the quarterfinals, and they've drawn Éire Óg. They were the only team to beat Éire Óg last year, who were the county champions. So I suppose they'll take confidence from that. And on the other side of the coin, I'd say it will serve to make Éire Óg be very wary of what they're facing next week. The fact that they lost to them last year, Éire Óg will be determined not to have a repeat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one to look forward to, and the weekend after next weekend. This weekend is a hurling weekend, so in the football quarterfinals. So there's a lot of big games at stake there. I suppose there was a big surprise, a bit of a surprise anyway, is in his time in overcoming Wolf Tones in the intermediate clash.
Yeah, I didn't think it was as big a surprise as some people make out, and that's not to knock Wolf Tones, as we'll say. Like, they had topped their group and they had comfortably progressed to this stage of the competition. But like, over the last 10 years, Innistimon have achieved an awful lot at underage level. They have won a lot of titles from 14 to 16 to minors, and there's a lot of players available to them, and when you look at their line out, they have a great mix. They have 2 or 3 of the most experienced players in the county, Lawrence Healy, Joe Dowling, who have been regulars for well over 10 years with their senior team. And they're holding down key positions, and then they have young fellas coming through, a couple of more of the Ruins, Niall Canavan, who I believe was very, very good last week as well. So I still think that they will trouble any of the teams that are left in the race at this stage.
Yeah, indeed they will. And in the Kildysart and Shannon Gales, which was a cracking match and went all the way to extra time, and then all the way to the dreaded penalties. I suppose Kildysart came out of the blocks and they were well up. They were just up at half time, but Shannon Gales hit the front and held it all the way right. It was Kildysart to make a draw of it, and then the penalties just went against Shannon Gales. And of course it has gone into controversy now, but I don't want to say too much about the controversy until I think there's a meeting tonight. But the game itself was two neighbours battling it out.
Yeah, Shannon side neighbours, they know each other very well, so there was no problem with either side being motivated for this one. Kildysart, who have been so close to winning this title over the last half dozen years or so, they've struggled over the last number of weeks. They were very good in the early part of this season, got to the Cusack Cup final, and really put it up to St. Brecons in that final. But a couple of weeks ago, they lost their ace forward, Diarmuid O'Donnell, to a cruciate knee injury. And it seems to have really rattled their confidence and their play, and they have kind of struggled in their games in the championship up to now.
Yeah.
They were always going to be facing a well-drilled and a hungry Shannon Gales team. Local derby, neighbouring rivals always brings out the best in each other. And from what I'm told, I wasn't at that game, but from what I'm told, if you were to say somebody was unlucky, it was Shannon Gales. They held the upper hand for maybe more than half the playing time. But the penalty shootout, I think it's very harsh on clubs to lose out in the championship on penalties. But unfortunately, it's a national rule, and with the way most counties run their fixtures now, with the split season, there just isn't time. If you're to give clubs a league format in the championship and have to give them an opportunity to play so many games, there really isn't time to do otherwise. And with dual players and whatnot, and players on your county teams, whom you don't see for the league, there's so much pressure on to get games played. But losing out on penalties is very, very harsh for whoever it will be. And I'm sure it probably will happen again before the year is out, be it in hurling or football. And that's something I think that the GA needs to look at. And maybe, as a lot of people have suggested, a midweek replay, which poses its own problems with having enough venues with lights, or with players based, 3 or 4 hours of a drive away from counties, or, as we're seeing this year for a lot of clubs, players based overseas and returning home from England every weekend to assist their clubs. So from that point of view, I think that's something that has to be looked at. But the game itself, it attracted a big crowd. There was great interest in it right to the very end. And unfortunately, it's gone to the meeting room now, and it looks as if there's going to be, some kind of a decision made at a meeting room to try and resolve this crux.
Yeah. Wouldn't you have expected if I think that the insinuation is that there was too many subs used and maybe subs brought in to take penalties or whatever, but wouldn't you think that it would be a cut and dried rule? If you break the rules, there's a penalty. If not, there isn't a penalty.
Yeah, you would, but at the same time, I suppose the other side of that kind is, and maybe it's cut and dried. I don't know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in the GA, and it always has been the case, the onus is on the club lodging an objection to prove it.
Yeah.
So I presume in this case, Shannon Gales, who have, I understand, lodged an objection on the basis that too many subs were used, more than the required number allowed were used in extra time, and that players came on who hadn't been playing when the game finished, which is the rule, to take penalties. Obviously, presumably they'll be able to prove that. I suppose we've all known over the years, objections are won and lost on technicalities.
Yeah.
And everything has to be done by the book, and everyone has to have their I's dotted and their T's crossed. And I suppose that's always part of it. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
In the heat of battle, it's easy to make a mistake. Would you imagine there's a foolproof system there for clubs or for referees or court officials? It should be foolproof. You've used your amount of subs or whatever. But look, it's for another day, really. It's unfortunate for both clubs to be in this position. I think But...
it is, and there's so many connections between both parishes, and people from each parish playing with the other parish now, and their ancestors played the other way around, and things like that. And these things, I think, need to be sorted out, and need to be maybe there needs, as you said, to be clear-cut rules and divisions, or the specifications as to how these things work out with penalties and whatnot. So
and especially, but anyway, look. Just looking at Clare are through, or we expect them to be through, but they didn't get it all their own way.
No, they were made battle all the way as well. And I'm kind of inclined to wonder, is the pressure of wanting to win this competition so badly getting into teams? At the start of the year, Clare, Kilrush and Shannon Gales were on everybody's lips as the three teams from which the winner of this championship will most likely come. Kilrush and Clare had just been relegated from senior. Kilrush are out now, beaten, knocked out by, I suppose, wily battlers from O'Curry's. Clare struggled to overcome Navan, and only had 3 points to spare. And there seems to be kind of a nervousness in the play of the clubs that are maybe deemed to be the favourites for the title. And Clare aren't going to get anything soft from in Steinman in the semi-final, so they're going to have to, be at their best if they're going to come through.
Yeah, they will indeed. In the Steinman growing confidence as the season goes on, and so it's an eagerly weighted clash. And O'Curry's and Kilrush then. How did that one go, Seamus? I didn't get that.
Yeah, O'Curry's finished very strong. I think they were level at the halfway stage, and they were more or less even enough throughout the third quarter. And then O'Curry's got a goal that put them into 2 or 3 point lead, and they built on that and went on. Now it would have to be said that Gerard O'Brien was an absentee for Kilrush. Probably arguably their key player.
Yeah.
Man with plenty of inter-county experience. Unfortunately, he'd been sent off in the previous round and missed out on this game, which was a massive blow to the Shamrocks. But O'Curry's are they're noted battlers. It's very hard for any team to overcome them. They play with their heart on the sleeve. They have a great spirit back there. They have a very small panel. If you look at a lot of their games this year, they weren't even able to introduce a substitute because they just didn't have a fit player. They have about 17 in their panel, and if somebody's injured, they're struggling. And as a matter of fact, in the league, the last 2 games in the league, they conceded walkovers because they hadn't 15 fit bodies. But they won't be easy meat for anybody, whether it be as of now, at this moment, it's Kildice that they're facing. But whether that will change or not with this objection on the other side, one has to wait and see. But O'Curry's won't be easy for anybody, and nobody would like facing them.
They will not. And in the last game of the weekend there in the intermediate was Kilfenora and Clooney-Quinn. Kilfenora were out, obviously.
Yeah, but they survived. They have held their intermediate status. That was a relegation game, and Clooney-Quinn have one more chance now. Clooney-Quinn now face Michael Cusick with the loser of that game, dropping back down to junior.
Yeah.
I suppose the one thing that stands out about those 3 clubs is that they're again struggling for numbers, and any of those 3 clubs don't have underage teams on their own, so they don't have too many players coming through.
Yeah.
I know they're involved in amalgamations, all right, at underage level, but they don't have their own underage teams, which I suppose makes it a bit difficult. But Cusick's only came up there 2 years ago. They won the junior championship, and they have a lot of, double commitments. A lot of their players play hurling with Tubber and vice versa.
Yes.
And Tubber are going very well in the intermediate hurling championship, so that's probably a consideration as well. As to how they're feeling this year, but it's down to the wire now for them next week. The loser will be playing junior next year.
The winner takes all one for
that.
And in the senior then as well, another winner takes all one coming up, because Dunbeg are going to be facing Kilmahel to see who takes the drop there. Dunbeg and
Milltown. Yeah. Milltown are facing Kilmahel. Dunbeg survived last week.
Sorry, of course, the wrong way around. Yeah. Dunbeg, it was a draw after normal time. It went to extra time. Dunbeg really hammered it home then and got over it. Yeah.
They did. And I suppose the one thing that stood out here again, and we talked about it with the Clondigad game with people like Gary Brennan and Barry Toner, who are around for a long time. They mightn't like me saying it that way. I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but another man who's around for a long time and who has been, I suppose, winning the praise of everybody, David Tuberty. It was absolutely in sparkling form for Dunbeg. Kicked 10 points in that game, and there's some magnificent scores with either foot. It just shows what the man is capable of and the value he is to football. It will be a sad day when the time comes for him to hang up his boots, but he was key to Dunbeg surviving. Milltown are struggling a bit this year, and I think part of the reason is the absence of another veteran, an outstanding footballer in Gordon Kelly, who was out through injury and who had a surgery in a leg, which put him out for the year. His loss is incalculable. A huge loss. But it's down to the wire now. It's Milltown against Kilmahel next week, with the loser going back down to intermediate. And both of them have been there in modern times. In the last decade, both of them have won intermediate titles and come back up. So they'll know what's ahead of them. But one of them won't be playing at senior level next year. That's their meeting next Saturday in Dunbeg is expected to bring a big crowd.
It'll be a tense battle,
yeah.
David Tuberty is an outstanding performer in the championship again this year, and Gary Brennan is another standout player. I met him in at the weekend, and he wanted Clooney-Quinn to win just for one reason only, to be able to still see Gary Brennan playing football in the quarterfinals. So
obviously there are most football followers in Clare would be of the opinion that Gary still has a role to play at inter-county level. He stepped away from inter-county football 2 years ago, but you can still see the man he's just an outstanding player. He's a natural, and his loss to the county scene, was evident over the last year or two as well, even though they got some great results.
Yeah, it's a pity. He has such an awful lot to offer still, but sure, we'll watch that space anyway, I'm sure.
That's right. And I suppose, just to be fair, before we go from that, the amount of work he's doing into promotion of football, he's teaching in St. Flannan's College, he's looking after teams down there, and Flannan's have become, they're no longer cannon fodder for the big colleges in Munster. They're getting the results, and he's one of the men that's playing a big part in that.
Yeah, but Tony Kelly is a role model in hurling, in the way he lives, the way he carries himself. And then Gary Brennan is an absolute role model. I mean, if you had a young fella, you would just say, "What's this guy? See that's how he plays football. See how he lives. This is what every guy would want his son to be like, So he's a fantastic ambassador for the game, and brilliant to see him still playing such great football. And David Tuberty, and there's many more as well. But just those two guys are stand out. I think that was it then for the football. So it's coming down now it'll be down to the last. It is down to the last date we know now, and the pairings and that. So we'll have a closer look at the quarterfinals next week. But we'll turn our attentions now to the hurling over the weekend, because the quarterfinals of the hurling are now upon us. Big game on Saturday, Cratloe versus Newmarket, near neighbours. It should be a cracking game. I think Cratloe are a team that have kind of surprised me this year. They seem to be very fresh, even though they're playing the football, and they've been dual players, most of them, for the last a dozen years now. Well, maybe not quite a dozen years, but for a long time. And they seem to have a freshness about their play. They have taken on all comers, and they're going really well at the moment. So, but Newmarket aren't doing too badly either.
Correct, and as you say, they're neighbouring parishes, so that's going to spark off plenty of incentives for either side to win the game. And I suppose we talked there about the form, like Gary Brennan and David Tuberty are shown in football. And two lads that have been around for a while, who've been outstanding for Cratloe so far this year, Conor McGrath and Podge Collins. Fellas, who won the All-Ireland winning team of 2013. Many would argue that they're good enough to be part of a Clare setup still at this stage, but they've been outstanding. And most of the Cratloe guys, they have been there over the last decade. They've been part of the team, and they're still producing it. And as you said there, I suppose many people are surprised at how sharp they look this year. After a couple of years there where people felt that they were on the wane, but they've been so sharp this year, and they're hurling so well. And footballing so well, as also with practically the same squad of players. So from that point of view, I suppose they'll carry the favourites tag into this game. But Newmarket have been together now as well. They've been knocking on the door. They're getting to the concluding stages, and I suppose it's time that maybe they stepped across the line out this stage and brought something back to such a proud club. So I think it has the makings of a great game. And it's the opening game in the Cusack Park double bill on Saturday evening, which should make for plenty of excitement for an expected big crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Part of that double building is 6 Mile Bridge will take on Wolf Tones in the second quarter final, and it had to be said, like 6 Mile Bridge are overwhelming favourites, not alone to win this one, but to go all the way to the final and perhaps win it. But Wolf Tones, they have surprised us in games in the past, and they won't lie down too easily.
They certainly won't, and I suppose a lot of people would see it as a surprise that they have got to this stage of the championship. But if you look at the team, they're 4 or 5 or 6 standout players, who are capable of matching anybody on any given day. Rory Hayes, Aaron Shanahan, Aaron Cunningham, who has done it with the county but hasn't been with the county for the last couple of years because he went travelling for a while. Ben O'Gorman, who had his chance with the county. Dara and Dahi Lohan. All of these fellas, Dahi O'Connell is still around. All these fellas know what hurling is all about, and they know what it takes to win. And again, the Bridge and Wolf Tones, neighbouring clubs, bit of rivalry there. But to be fair, the Bridge have been maybe the team of the championship so far. They've comfortably disposed of all opposition. Sean Stack is a shrewd manager. He's been around for a long time. Has played his trade with various clubs across the province, and has led many clubs to various successes. And now with his own beloved 6 Mile Bridge, and he knows what it takes to win. And with the Mories and these fellas, they will have Jamie Shannon, Shane Golden is in particularly good form at the moment. Touch of a bit of a doubt, I believe, about Cathal Malone's carrying a bit of an injury. A bit of a doubt about his availability. But they're very set look about them, and they've brought in a couple of maybe 1 or 2 new fellas to the squad this year, and they're playing their part. So the Bridge will be favourites, and it will be surprised, I suppose, to be fair, if they don't advance. But I think they can expect one of their stiffest tests to date from a Wolf Tones side that has been growing in confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When you get to the quarterfinals, one thing, there's no second chance, there's no nothing. So you can throw the kitchen sink at it. You're not watching any. You just, this is it today. That's it. Go out and do your best and throw everything at it. Then with Sunday, we have Ballyea, who at the beginning of the year were certainly the favourites against Clooney-Quinn, but Ballyea haven't been performing in the up to now. But they've been doing enough. Obviously, they've got to the quarter final, but they nothing like they were last year. I feel Gary Brennan is a huge loss to him, and is Tony Kelly that we mentioned earlier, is he struggling a little bit too to find his maybe with fitness? I don't know what that is, but they're facing a Clooney-Quinn side who just seem to have a renewed vigour this year. Haven't had a quiet year last year, and Peter Duggan back in splendid form as well. So it makes for an intriguing clash.
It certainly does, and I suppose Peter Duggan, Ryan Taylor, an All-Star nominee, who's had a great season. They're 2 key men, and Shane McNamara is very much underrated. He's an outstanding defender. So they have that, but they have Clooney-Quinn have a lot of young fellas in this year who are playing. Like John Keneally has been outstanding at centre back. He has been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah. They're building a good team. Keith Hogan is an experienced goalkeeper. He has been around. He has seen what's involved, and he has played at underage level for Clare. So they have a good squad, and they won't be easily pushed aside. As you say, Ballyea have been struggling maybe a small bit to maintain their form. Now, they had already qualified when they played Cratloe last day out, but they were well beat in that game. And that'll be a concern for them. I know they have Gary Brennan is a huge loss. Agree with you there. He's a huge loss. And then they have struggled with a few injuries. Cathal Doohan is back from Australia, and who was such a key part of their first winning team a few years ago. But he's been struggling with a bit of an injury this year, which hasn't helped his cause. Tony Kelly, it looks as if he's carrying a bit of an injury.
Yeah.
But I suppose Tony is such an outstanding player that the public, I suppose, expect Tony to do every day what he's done most days up to now, what he did in the Inter-County Championship. But after all, he's human. And
Yeah.
other clubs are kind of posting 2 men on him everywhere now. There's kind of a man marker and if you like, another guy playing in front of him to try and cut the supply off him, and he's still getting scores. Maybe not to the same extent, but they have great players. Jack Brown, Paul Flanagan. They're two very experienced fellas as well, and they have a lot of that. Pierce Lillis has been very consistent with them as well all along. So they would still be entitled to the favourites tag, but it mightn't be as easy as people would have said 2 months ago. If you asked somebody 2 months ago, that have said, trying to get Ballyea come through that handy enough. But Clooney have shown in the meantime what they're building, and Ballyea haven't maintained the same standards. So it could be the game of the weekend now. I'd say that as well.
It could be. And in the last one, my own club, Aina Kildemona face a Rogue. It's a repeat of last year's semi-final, I think, was it? A Rogue out for revenge and, going really well. Aina Kildemona, no more than Ballyea, struggling for form. Smith O'Brien's beat them earlier on. They were lucky to get over Wolf Tones, I suppose, as well there, and they had when they needed to, but they did get over them. So I suppose before I go into that game, you can go along in getting out of your group is one thing, but you could suddenly burst into form then when you come up to the knockouts, and maybe that's me clutching the straws for my own team, but that's the feeling. If a team can really produce it at a quarter-final stage, that's the time to produce it.
Well, that's without a doubt, that's the time. I suppose they've been struggling a bit with form all along, but there's no doubting that their ability is within that panel. They've loads of players in Aina Kildemona. They've won a lot of underage titles as well, but it's to get to get the settled 15, and have struggled to get that so far this year. Now they haven't been helped with injuries. Kevin Hare, last year I suppose was he captain last year, has been struggling with shake-off injury this year. Seems to have been near enough to full fitness now. And if he's at his best, it will be a big plus. David Fitzgerald, this year's captain, he's had a great season with Clare. He has the ability to trouble any opposition. So if a few of those hit for him, they'll get it right. I suppose is there extra pressure on Aero? Their supporters feel that they have to win the championship this year. They feel that they will win it. Does that put an extra pressure on them? There's no doubting that I suppose the player of the championship so far has been Shane O'Donnell, in my view. He's doing for Aero now what Tony Kelly has been doing for Ballyea and for Clare for the last 2 or 3 years. He's a standout player. He's virtually unmarkable. But has he the backup that a team needs to win a championship is the question. The few of the other lads around him, they haven't produced maybe the same form or their best form, whereas he has been in absolutely unbelievable form, in my opinion. But then Aaron Fitzgerald, he struggled a bit with injuries this year. When he's injury free, he's a key cog, but he's picked up a lot of injuries. Kieran Russell, and they're also key players in their football team, which is seeking to retain the title. So from that point of view, it will be very interesting. There's no doubt but that Aero are going strong for this championship. They feel that they left one after them last year. That would be the feeling amongst our supporters and amongst our club members. But it's not easy to win. You know that it's not easy to win, and the other clubs would say we are as good as what they have, and that's a rallying call, if you like, for all teams. So I think we're in for a cracking weekend of Senior Hurling Championship in Clare.
Yeah.
A really cracking weekend. The pairings, I think, have worked out very well because each of the 4 have the capability of producing cracking contests. So Aero would probably start as favourites in that quarter-final on Sunday because Aina Kildemona haven't been as consistent as they were last year. Yes. But if they hit the form that they're capable of going all the way.
Yeah. I think there's a return for Conor Hegarty probably as well, who struggled with injury, and Keith White, who's a great performer. If he's back from injury, has he the game time under his belt? That remains to be seen. Gavin Cooney's another standout for a row because it caught my eye this year in the hurling. He's a renowned footballer, but I saw him the last day. He kind of caught my eye there. He was very impressive. So an awful lot to play for the whole 2 big A's in Cusack Park, and it should throw up some great matches anyway, and we're looking forward to it. Just to look at the you have Whitegate and Clarecastle in this playoff. 2 teams that they've been in this territory before. They're trying to get up the ladder. Whitegate are one team, they can beat the best team in the county, and then they can just come out the next day, and they don't seem, the consistency is probably something that they're probably lacking, but they're capable of just going toe to toe with anyone in any given day. Clarecastle have made improvements this year, but they're still in this dogfight.
Agreed, and I've heard people say during the week that the 2 games most likely to be the hardest fought this weekend are the 2 relegation games, Clarecastle against Whitegate and Scariff against Smith O'Brien's.
Yeah.
They're 2 huge games because the losers of both those games lose their senior status. They drop down to intermediate.
Yes.
And nobody wants to be in that situation. Definitely nobody. Clarecastle they have been close to going down a couple of times in recent years, as indeed have been Whitegate. And as you rightly said there, Whitegate have battled their way out of it, and a couple of years ago Clarecastle did the same. So this is a huge game for both those clubs. I suppose Whitegate haven't been going as well this year as they did in other years. They lost all their group games in the championship. Clarecastle have battled hard. And they had a draw. That was their best result in the championship. So it's all down to this, and there's an awful lot at stake for both clubs, and there'll be a lot of disappointed people in either parish come Saturday evening. And the other game is on Sunday. Smith O'Brien's against Scariff. They're East Clare neighbours. There will be a lot of connections between the 2 parishes, which adds to the rivalry. Scariff arguably produced their best performance in the championship last day out against Kilmaley, and were maybe a bit unlucky to really put Kilmaley to the pin of their colours in that one. Smith O'Brien's produced, as you rightly said earlier, their best performance against Heineken Limona in round 3, but still ended up in this position. So there's an awful lot to play for there. Scariff will be looking to hopefully Mark Rogers, will get the scores that they need to stay in senior. Like they're only up a couple of years. In fact, both clubs are only up a couple of years, but Scariff were relegated and came back up fairly rapidly. So they don't want to be in the same position again. But these are 2 huge games.
2 huge games, and I suppose whoever wins both of those games, it'll feel like a real huge championship win and a huge relief. And unfortunately for those to go down, both of those games are on in Tulla, Seamus. I took the liberty there. I was passing Tulla there about some day last week, I think, and I just took the liberty of going in to have a look around the stand when there was nobody there, and the facilities. And I just want to compliment Tulla on an absolutely, to have that facility now for the county. Tulla was always one of my favourite pitches, even though when my playing days I didn't like playing East Clare teams there because we always thought they had an advantage, but it's a splendid pitch, and the view from the stand is as good as it ever was when the hill was there. So it put full compliments to Tulla on that one.
I agree with you 100%. I was there a couple of weeks ago at a game, and that development, the stand, the meeting rooms up at the back, everything. The press facilities. They have an absolutely fantastic development there. Which befits a club of Tulla standing in fairness. Dr. Daly Park is noted, I suppose, far and wide. And there are many happy memories of Clare teams, especially in the 70s, out there. But it's a fantastic development, and they deserve every credit going.
Yes, and just to finish off, Seamus, I just want to offer my condolences to Jim McInerney on the passing of his mother. I think she's been laid to rest today. And
I suppose the same to the Clooney-Quinn manager, Tommy Corbett, who's dead died.
Absolutely, yes.
Very this weekend as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. That brings us to the end, Seamus. Once again, thanks very much for your insight. we'll know the semi-finals of the hurling next week, and we look forward to the quarter-finals of the football. But this weekend is a big weekend, and we're looking forward to heading to places like Tulla and Cusack Park. So thanks very much, Seamus.
No problem, Alex.
Okay.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.
All right.